Okay, recording is in progress. All right. Um, so, hi everyone, and thank you so much for your patience. And it's great you're still here with us. My name is Deborah Sloan, and I'm the president of the Northwest Ceramics Foundation. And I'd like to welcome you all to this presentation by Dr. Peter Wilson. But first, there's some preparatory remarks. The Northwest Ceramics Foundation is grateful for and acknowledges it operates on land that is the unceded, shared traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh nations. We stand in solidarity with all communities marginalized due to race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or age, and commit ourselves to opposing racism in all its forms. For those not currently on our mailing list, please go to our website, www.nwcf.ca. At the top of every page, there's a blue button. Click on it. You'll be taken to a form. Put in your email, and note you'll get an email back. Please confirm that you want to keep receiving these emails and look for it. And look for it in your junk too, just in case. That completes your sign up. All our talks are free and they are open to anyone interested, but all talks on Zoom require registration. For those of you in the Greater Vancouver region, you please check out some ceramic shows, including Fired Identity, Greater Vancouver Chinese Canadian Artists in Clay. This is at the Kwantlen College in Surrey until June 26th. As well, there's an exhibition entitled Where Form Meets the Boundless, and this is featuring 5 artists from Taiwan and 4 from Vancouver. It's on view at the Jig Space Gallery until June 3. So you don't have much time to see that one. It's very, very interesting. Hopefully, many of you will be able to get to these. For the duration of our talk, we ask that you mute yourselves, turn off your video. This improves transmission. At the end of the talk, we will have a discussion period during which you can turn your videos back on, and you can put it in the chat. We'd like to thank Jen Wooden, our board member, for helping us out with our technology here. And this talk is being recorded. It will be put on our website in a few weeks or so, and you can visit it more often. And there's lots of other talks there now as well that are open to you. Now, it is our great pleasure to welcome our speaker, Dr. Peter Wilson. Peter earned his Doctorate of Creative Arts from the University of Western Sydney in Australia. He has participated in numerous group and solo exhibitions in Australia, Pakistan, and Canada, and in residencies in Italy, Pakistan, and the UK. Peter has received significant awards for his unique ceramics, which are in private and public collections in Canada, South Korea, Pakistan, Japan, and Australia. For many years, he was a senior lecturer at the Charles Sturt University in New South Wales, and his commissioned ceramic tiles grace a number of public buildings. Focusing primarily on the vessel, Peter favors uncomplicated forms that complement the extraordinary ash and crystalline glazed surfaces for which he is best known. Making use of local materials such as marble, rhyolite, basalt, and wood ash, he writes that his major interest in ceramics lies in the effects of the fire, effects that are uniquely ceramic and which cannot be reproduced by the brush or any other method. We have been looking forward very much to this talk. So please welcome Dr. Peter Wilson.
Thank you very much. Can you, I just need to be able to share my screen. Can you hear me, Deborah?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm just going to see if Jen's probably working on it with you.
Okay, right. Thanks very much. Okay, well, look, I'll start just while I'm trying to get my screen to be able to be shared with everyone.
Yeah, you're co-host now, so you should be able to share.
It just keeps on coming up saying Share, okay. One sec, I'm just still having a few technical issues here and getting my PowerPoint up. Anyway, look,
It continues to be a problem. I have your PowerPoint, and if Deb lets me share it, I can put it up.
Okay, have you got that? Is it?
Yeah, I'm just, Jen might be able to figure that one out.
Can you see my screen now?
Not quite.
But I'm just trying to run it now. Yeah. Look, I'm just. That's not it.
Jen, why don't you
Okay.
make it so I can share and I can put the PowerPoint up?
Have you got that there?
I
Yes.
have
I've
a
put
copy of it as
multiple.
well.
I've
So
got
it'd be
multiple.
best if I did it.
Yeah.
Okay, look, I'll just start because I'm having difficulty sharing my screen.
Mhm.
Welcome everyone, and thanks for tuning in. And I do apologise for these technical glitches. I guess it's partially my fault, so I'm not going to apportion blame, but it's my fault. I'll take that blame. Anyway, thanks to Amy and Deborah and for your organisation for this event and for helping to sort out all the wrinkles, which we're still having right now. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of these lands, the Wiradjuri people where we are, and their descendants past and present. I had intended early when I was first extended this invitation to actually be there in person actually, but events transpired. Okay, sorry, thanks Jen, I've got your screen, excellent. As I said, I had intended to be there in person, but it didn't happen. I've had a very good connection with Canada, having worked there for several rotations when my university had a campus in Burlington, in Ontario. I became a member there at the Potters Guild at the then Burlington Arts Centre. Jonathan Smith was the curator, and I met a few other potters, Reed Flock, Scott Barnum, Inouye, and later on my second tour, Bruce Cochran, Tony Clennell, Don Zvier, Susan Card, Michelle Lynn, to name a few. And I participated in a group firing at the New Hamburg wood-fired kiln with a group of people, and we got a whole lot of pots out of that. So this first slide, there's me in the studio making just some of my standard wear, but I did a series of really large pots as a commission, and these were some of them. So if we can move on to the next slide, that'd be great. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, right. So this is my studio. It's hidden away there behind those liquid amber trees, and it's just hit autumn right now, so the colours are beautiful. Next one, thanks. Okay, so this is the entrance of our property, and one of the features is I've got a dry stone wall, and this reflects my abiding interest in geology. Having done a geology degree once I finished my teaching qualification, rocks and clays and materials became an abiding interest of mine, and that was in the 1970s and has been a major focus all my life since that period. Just going back to my connection with Canada briefly, when I was there, I did a few pieces for a few of my pieces were collected for public for public collections at the Burlington Art Gallery, which the Art Centre then became, and at the Canadian Clay and Glass Galleries. And I also did several shows at the Art Centre. I also did some writing when I was there, and I wrote several articles, two of which were exhibition reviews for, one was for Inouye on her first exhibition in Toronto, and the second was for an exhibition by Scott Barnum at the Art Centre. And also I wrote a chapter in the Sloppy Craft book published in 2015 by Elaine Cheesley Patterson and Susan Surette. So I've had a good connection with Canada, and I remain in contact with quite a few of my ex-students and ceramic people. Now, I'll just talk a bit more about myself, which is not something which I'm fond of doing. I became interested in pottery in high school through a neighbour of mine, Les Collins, who was the head thrower at a production factory. He worked piece rates in those days, sat there with the smoke hanging out of his mouth and throwing clay all day. 6 dozen 2-gallon jars, 4 dozen ginger jars, etc. I used to go to the factory with him, and he got me started, clay preparation and throwing. But he only made the pots. He never got involved in the firing. They were all once fired with salt in a big coal and gas kiln, and I toyed with the idea of actually working there at that stage, but the place was winding down, and cheaper slip cast imports were being brought in from Asia, and they were replacing the locally produced wares. I went to university instead and did a teaching qualification, and then a geology paleontology degree. I took some years off to try and make pots full-time, which was initially successful, but I realised that it was unsustainable because you were dictated to by the market. It became just another job, and it relied on repetition, long hours, chasing sales, and no scope to develop my own ideas, and no time for my family. So I went back to teaching, which gave me the time and the salary so that I could experiment and make what I wanted. So I did that. I taught in a variety of schools in outback New South Wales, in Indigenous communities, larger schools for kids with learning issues, kids with disabilities, and then I went to the university. This meant I had to do further study to keep my job, and I studied externally with Owen Rye at Monash, who was an iconic figure in wood firing, and then I did a master's and then a doctorate. So the cohorts in these courses, Owen's in particular, meant that I was mixing with people who had gone on to become successful in the ceramic world. Chester Neely, Paul Davis, David Stutchbury, Sandra Black, to name a few. So next slide, please. Okay, so this is just sort of obviously some of the tools of my practice, starting with clay preparation. Next, thanks. Next, thank you. And let me come to this book here, which is my my reference. So every book, now every firing actually is recorded, all the materials. It requires a pedantic effort to be able to replicate and to develop new ideas so that you're not repeating and you've got accurate records of what you've done. So this is really the key to the notion of art and science. It's a combination, it's a culmination of the two. So each glaze firing documents the test tiles, the firing cycles, the clays used in making each pot, glazes, recipes, where each is placed in the kiln, etc. The results are then evaluated and written up. Pots are photographed, conclusions are drawn, and these are uploaded to a digital record. And where to, that is the next decisions that are made, and this record documents everything that I've done. So next, please. So I grew up in the 1970s. Well, I started making pots in the early 1970s, and it was very much in the Leach tradition. Humberder and Leach came to Sydney in '65, but I was only about 14 at that time, so I didn't actually, it wasn't significant to me who they really were. But I got interested through Peter Rushforth, who was the head of the ceramics at the National Art School in Sydney. He was a great mentor, and he lived not far from where we lived. I travelled to the UK, Japan, Shigaraki in particular, Italy, China, Labourne in France, Pakistan, and Canada. And I think of inspiration not only as trying to copy traditional pots, but of absorbing many influences which go into a large melting pot. But when you sit down and plan and decide what you're making, your work takes on its own life and form and glazes. I love the Song Dynasty glazes, the Chuns, the Hare's Fur, the Celadons, the Oil Spots. I've tried to make them all, and with some success, but of course local materials are difficult to replicate from that era. But the crucial point is that local materials, ash, clays, other materials, all add to the terroir and the individual style of each region's pots. So I've tried to do that, and even to this day, I actually use a lot of local materials. We've got a limestone or a marble quarry here, which I use calcium carbonate in my glazes. I've also got a kaolin pit on a mountain not far from here. There's also a basalt quarry, which I use, the basalt dust, a very iron-rich body, which can give me a nice celadon, and a variety of wood ashes, and the hardwood ashes, and each ash from each tree is obviously different and gives you a different result. So, yeah, these are some of the materials, and I collect materials, I crush them up, put them on the ball mill, sieve them, and then spray them. Okay, thanks. Next one. Next slide. Okay, so this is my collection of materials. So it's a science, as we all know. Weighing, mixing, sieving, ball milling if we need to, and then actually glazing by spraying. Most of my glazes are sprayed. Thanks. Thank you. Okay, so I really fell in love with some of the Chinese glazes, some Chuns, and this was one of my early success ranges of what's Chun and an iron base, two iron glazes, and I used to use rutile as a way to break them up and to link them together. Thanks. This is another one. I don't know whether you can actually identify it, but it's Halley's Comet. Came in 1986, and it was well, it was a huge revelation. I mean, there was such public interest in the comet. People were getting up. I was teaching, and we had nights where the comet would come up. We would all be up at 3 o'clock in the morning observing the comet. So I tried to represent in that a series, and yeah, you can see the head and light tail at the back. And it was probably one of my most successful series. Thank you. Just a few celadons from that period. Not quite the same quality as the Chinese celadons, but I was doing my best to replicate those Song Dynasty glazes. Thanks. Okay, so Inouye came out here, and when she was visiting Australia, she came to Bathurst, and she came up and gave a talk to our local potters group. Some of the members there, we had a night of slides and discussion of pots. Thanks. This was a commissioned sculpture that I did for the university, and it was bronze, it stood about 2 meters high. It was to do with the fact that everyone was together at one point, and they all came together and they all spread out and left and took up their own place in the world. So that was the symbolism of that bronze sculpture. And to fund it, everyone paid, I think, $50 or something to engrave a tile. So we had these tile making workshops. All the alumni came in and they all paid the money and joined it. But they wanted a water feature, which I really didn't want. So we got a lot of stones from the local river that goes through my city, Bathurst, and we laid those in and made a little bit of a pond with that had a little aerator. Anyway, so that was after it was opened. I think it was probably around about 2010. And Inouye was visiting at that time. So there, thanks very much. Next one. Okay, so this is a terrible photograph, I'm sorry, but 1991, I decided on going down and working with Owen Rye down in Monash University in Victoria. He wanted us to do something that was totally different and just try another area of ceramics. And I had seen Paul Soldner when he came out to Australia. He'd been out for a conference in Adelaide in 1981. And I was really impressed with his way of working, and it was very sort of abstract, expressionistic. Like he'd throw a pot, throw it on the floor, jump on it, and use a lot of the impressed markings from his shoes as a basis for the decoration, and then he'd take it and rework it and raku fire it. So, but this wasn't. These were all thrown, but that one was a very lustrous piece, and yeah, I apologise for the quality of that photograph. Next one. This was what I was really into, and when I talk about materiality, glazes are one form of materiality, but also surface was another. And I was really able to explore some of the really interesting aspects of ceramics and those materials with raku. So it was a question of adding a whole series of different slips, colours, ingobes, and lustres, and then maybe firing it 2 or 3 times, and then doing a raku firing at the end, in which the lustres were added. So yeah, that's an example of that. That's another one. You can sort of see. You can see the effect that I was trying to get. So I used a slip that was only partially vitrified, and then by sandblasting it, you're able to sort of blast sections away. And then, yeah, so you get real qualities of mud cracking and the earth. Yeah, next, thanks. Okay, so you can sort of see some of the types of surfaces that I was trying to develop. These were around about 35 centimetres high by about 40, 45 wide. And you can see some of the detail of that surface on the right, with lustres and highlighted sections and colours underneath. Difficulty with this technique is that with big forms like that, the thermal shock created a whole range of issues to do with, well, cracking, of course, but, you know, the variation in what you were trying to achieve, although that was part of the intuitive marks that you were actually being able to get. So, yeah, it's unpredictable, but it's got a wonderful magnetic attraction to it, and I actually love Raku. The difficulty in making these sorts of works is that the loss rate was high, as I mentioned, but also the difficulty in selling them was another feature. So, yeah, after about 6 or 7 years, I abandoned it, but I still did the occasional workshop for quite a few years after, but tend not to do it anymore because I prefer to use wares that can be used. Yep. Okay, thanks. Next one. Next one. Thanks. There's another example. So this was an earthwork series, and yeah, I think it's probably some of the best works I've ever actually made. You can sort of see examples of mud cracking and not so much sandblasting with that one, but yeah, it was to do with erosion, it's to do with decay and natural qualities of the earth. Thanks. There's another one. There was a mining town near where I live called Hill End, which was a gold mining area, and a lot of the surface is reflected in those sorts of ochre-y colours, and the decay and weathering of those sorts of surfaces was what I was trying to actually reflect in that particular work. Thanks. So I got interested in crystalline glazes just fascinated by the whole notion of just the miracle of spraying one glaze on and coming out in a whole range of different crystals of different colours. So I started work on that probably around about 1996, and but turning crystal glazes into something that are acceptable in my view. I mean, everyone's got their own view of what's acceptable and what they like and what they dislike. But I just really like to have simple forms, and the surface would be the decoration, I suppose. So yeah, that was my focus. But that whole notion of selective molecular bonding was sort of like miraculous, you know, and coming to terms with that and trying to turn that into something aesthetic was a huge challenge. So even after, like, say, nearly 30 years of working with these sorts of glazes, I'm still experimenting and still trying to get a good surface. Now, you've got some really good crystal glazes over there in your country. Diane Kraber was a great pioneer, really, and she's written at least one book, but there's many others. Yeah, sometimes I think the aesthetics and the combination of form and glaze don't tend to work that well, so mine are very restrained. Thank you very much. Next. There's a couple more. And next one, thanks. So this is a manganese crystal. I'm sure some of you have seen these sorts of glazes before. They're a bit highly toxic, so I only did them for a very short period of time. Mind you, all glazed materials are toxic, and extreme care needs to be taken in using them. Yep, next one, thanks. Just a large vase, little jar. And one of the interesting things is that you can use a whole range of different materials in crystalline glazes as colorants, but probably the most powerful ones are cobalt, copper, manganese as a background, and maybe iron also. But there's a lot of other materials that can influence the quality of the crystal and the background and the combination thereof. I mean, there's so many variables with crystalline glazes. For example, the thickness of the application, the form of the piece, whether it's a horizontal or an oblique or a vertical surface, the type of firing, the type of atmosphere. A lot of crystalline glazes don't like reduction on the way up. They can take it on the way down, but not on the way up. But also, you need to take it right up to top temperature to actually melt all the materials and then cool it to within the crystal growing phase. And by moving that temperature around, you can get a whole range of different growth rings and halos and other sorts of effects. So there's a myriad number of factors which control the surface of those pots, and it's very easy to get it wrong. And there's a lot of failures, huge numbers of rejects before you actually get it half right. Anyway, thanks. Next one. In 1991, I had this character by the name of John Olsen, who was one of Australia's more famous painters. He moved to our area, and he approached me and wanted to do a collaboration. Wanted me to make the pots and for him to decorate them. So we started, and we did about 130 pieces in total over a nearly 8-year period. And then, well, it broke. It's finished up. So here he is in the studio when he first came. Let's go on to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is some of his work. He was one of the first painters to actually go out into the outback of Australia and observe closely the fauna and the landforms. I mean, Hans Huyssen had been there in the 1915 to about 1925 in outback South Australia, but Olsen went to Lake Eyre in South Australia, which is a huge void. It's the lowest point in Australia in terms of sea level, but it fills up when they have floods in Queensland, all flow down through what's called the Channel Country into Lake Eyre. It's called Thatakundai, and that's the indigenous name. And the place just comes alive. It's teeming with fish, frogs, birds. Birds come, and there's literally millions of birds, and it becomes just this huge, sort of like a huge sort of environment for animals. It's just like unbelievable. So Olsen in 1974, it was the first time in in 100 years that it had been in flood. So he went out there for several voyages and was able to capture what he thought his interpretation of the landscape. So that's an aerial view. Next one, thanks. Okay, so this is one of his features, which is called The Frogs in the Lily Pond. And it's sort of like is able to capture the whimsy and fun, if you like, and joie de vivre of little frogs in their pool, eating little critters, and just living. Had a great, wonderful sense of imagination and a wonderful sense of humour. Next one. Okay, so these are some of the works that we did, and that's a terrible photograph. I'm sorry about that. So that was probably around about 450 mils wide. So you get a bit of a sense of it. So they were mid-fired, they weren't glazed, and these were some of the work. So he was referencing his time in Italy, in Spain. He worked in southern Spain, in Mallorca, and became enamored with the works of Miro and Picasso, and was also influenced by the paintings of Tapies. And so those influences, after his trip to Lake Eyre, he decided, rather than just to sort of decorate paint pots with, just sort of standard glazes, that he wanted to actually try and emulate the coarseness and roughness of the outback and capture the essence of his voyage into the outback, which was termed Journey into the U-Butte Country, 1974. Thanks. Next one. So these were sort of largely just big platters, about 500 wide on average. Thanks. Next one. So he was really into wanting to capture that roughness of the landscape. You can see it a little bit there with a bit of cracking and surface texture. Next, thanks. And you can sort of see it there where I've tried to sort of make a slip that virtually falls off. And this actually linked with some of that work with Raku that I was doing. So I was able to develop a whole, cross-fertilise really. And some sgraffito as well. This one. Yep, another one there. So you get a bit of a sense of the size of it there with that one. Pelican. These all went for between $5,000 and $10,000, where I was selling platters for about $250 at the time. So you get a bit of a sense of the disparity. Thanks. And that was an egg. And interestingly enough, I was virtually, I was sort of shut out of most of the recognition of the work. It was Olsen Ceramics, so that wasn't a great sense of satisfaction from my point of view. Plus, I was paid in the number of pieces that I was able to keep, which was about a dozen. So I learned a lot from that collaboration. Anyway, next one. So I started into using, when I first started making pots, I started to use wood ash, because that was a really cheap and local material. And these are some pots I actually started to to use ash again after probably around about, I don't know, maybe early 2000s. So I was using some crystals, but I also liked fire with in reduction, and so these ones were some of those pots. Thanks. So this was part of a couple of commissions that I made, a series of big pieces for an entrance of a private hospital. So I used throw and coil technique, and I still actually use that technique today. Thanks. So this is some of my more explorations with iron glazes, and yeah, they're a difficult glaze to get. You need the right sort of clay. I mostly tend to use porcelain when I'm looking for really good glazes. All my crystal glaze pots are porcelain, which is much more difficult to work than just straight stoneware. And you have to be aware of contaminations and the way that porcelain behaves in terms of warpage and cracking, basically. But there's some really good porcelains around these days. So, yeah, I tend to use a lot of porcelain. Thanks. And this one, actually, I reduced after I've actually fired it. So I post-fire and reduction, and you can see oxidation and reduction a bit the way it was placed in the kiln. And I mean, people do some interesting things with crystalline glazes. They reduce, and they also do acid etching, which I've really never been into. So yeah, there's lots of possibilities, limited only by your imagination and your sense of aesthetics. Thanks. But I really actually took to the matte crystalline glazes. They're my favourite. They're more difficult and they're beautiful to touch. So I have really tried to work a lot more with the matte glazes. Thanks. So there's another one. And with the matte glazes, what I found is that there are only several, in Australia, there's probably only, that I've discovered, maybe 2 or 3 clays that can actually grow matte crystals. A lot of clays don't particularly like to grow. I think it's to do with the free silica in the clay, actually. So that's my take on it. Thanks. So once a year, I've been going up to a friend's place on a property about 3.5 hours away from here, northwest of Bathurst, is about 200 kilometres west of Sydney, across the Great Dividing Range, the Blue Mountains. This character, Jeff Thomas, and his wife, they live on a property at Gilgandra, which is about another 3.5 hours northwest of here. And he's got a farm, and they've got a lot of dead cypress pine trees. And so he's got a wood kiln. He's a potter, and he's been making pots for about as long as I have. And we get together every September. I usually go up there and have a week beforehand, trying to take the pots up, get the wood, split it, and then we go on fire for a week once a year. And these are some of the pots that came out of that. Thanks. So this is us just finishing off the fire and putting in a wood door just to give it a final boost at the end. Yes, thanks. So he's got an anagama, It's about 5 meters long, and it sort of steps up. I've got a photo of it actually. Probably one of the subsequent slides. It takes a lot of work to fill it, and usually 2 or 3 of us do it, and then we fire for 5 days. These are some of Jeff's pots. Thanks. So there it is. You really don't get a good view of it. It's just like a big slug, big whale. And I usually do the midnight till 8 a.m. shift. The 3 of us do 8-hour shifts for 5 days. Anyway, thanks very much. Next one. These are some of the pots that I was getting ready to take up to that firing. And some I've just put a slip on, Shino slips, to give a bit of reaction. And I try and use a few different clays, but yep. Thanks. So this is an interesting little one. It's got quite a bit happening. It's got a bit of flashing, a bit of carbon entrapment, and a bit of wood ash that's run. And occasionally you get a nice little one with that reveals some of the firing. And wood firing is different altogether. It's to do very much with the type of materials you're using, the positioning in the kiln, the way you've stacked the pot, the length of firing, the ash deposit, how much ash, and so many variables. But there's a wonderful uniqueness to it, and each side of the pot tells a different story. And I guess ultimately you're trying to get a range of different features on the pot, so that every pot from every angle looks different and interesting. And there's a huge amount of interest in wood firing. It's a very community-based practice, and it's just great to see so many people involved in firing, and wood firing in particular lends itself to that, because it takes a team of people to do it, to get the wood, to make the pots, to fill it, and then to actually fire it and to unstack it. And there's a whole social circle that revolves around that, and just a wonderful thing to do. Thanks. These are some that I got out of those, some of mine. This one on the left was a piece from the firebox, and something that you would have dug up from a wreck that had been underwater for a couple of centuries. Right, thanks. This is another little jar, faceted and decorated with a coil wire. Thanks. So I've been exploring a lot more ash recently, and this is one out of my little gas kiln. And you can get some really wonderful effects with ash as well. Thanks. This is just an open studio event that I was advertising. They usually open up once a year, and keep up with my local community and sell a few pots. Thanks. These are some of the larger ash glaze jars. They're about a metre, a bit under a metre high. So, yeah. Next. Thanks. So basically, that's the same glaze on two different clays. So they've been thrown and altered and squared to some extent. Yep. Next one. That's another one. Thank you. So this is a combination of glazes, and yeah, I just like that notion of ash, and I've put a bit of salt in there as well. So just one glaze with ash and other variations, which break the surface up nicely and give an interesting variation to the pot and the glaze quality. Thanks. So for some further ash and glaze combinations. Thanks. So you can just see a few pots in the various stages of their completion. I overfired the one on the right, as you can see, stuck to the shelf. Common, not an uncommon disaster. Yeah, next one, thanks. So, yeah, just exploring those same ash qualities with bowls and domestic ware. Thank you. Yeah, another one, faceted. Thanks. And you can add colorants to change the quality of the ash just by mixing it with, well, the interface between a glaze and an ash gives an interesting effect. And also by adding some iron or a bit of cobalt, change the quality and color of the ash as well. Thanks. And obviously the thickness of the application causes a range of different effects as well. Thanks. So this is the matte crystalline glaze. So it's really beautiful when it works. It's beautiful to touch. And yeah, it's special when it works. Thanks. That's the gloss, which I find it was a bit loud, but anyway. Next one, thanks. So this is a combination of matte glazes, matte crystalline glazes. Thanks, thank you. So this is this says copper. So copper is selectively bonds in a gloss crystalline glaze, and I really actually like the fact that you can get an interesting background. So the contrast is really what is important in this piece, and the halos. Thank you. It's another one of using using cobalt and a little bit of iron to give the background. Thanks. So this is another ash glaze, and you can put some additives in the ash so that you get a lovely rich gold colour at the top. It sort of bleeds to the surface. So it's a lovely intuitive effect. And as potters who are watching, closely observe glazes and glaze, the reaction of glazes and mixtures, sort of take notice to why and how you achieve those sorts of effects that are really sort of serendipitous, really. And the idea is that with your note taking and your record keeping, you'd have some idea as to how you did that. But it's been a bit elusive for me, so I haven't been as as diligent as I should have been. But I think I worked it out now. Anyway, thank you. Next one. So this was a result. I'm firing these in my gas kiln, and yep, really enjoying exploring the results I'm getting from faceted and squared vases, thrown and altered. Thanks. A couple of bigger pieces. On the left, you can see the effect that you get with the glaze not being as thick, so it just bubbles up and just forms into little droplets. Whereas on the right, you can see it where it's thick, it runs really heavily. Thanks. Next one. And a couple of other little bowls and wine cups, or just little cups. Good, thanks. And similar example of ash teapot. Thank you. So on the left, series of faceted bowls, and just a combination of ash and matte glazes. Thanks. And there is my grandson, Freddie, enjoying playing hide and seek in one of my pots. So that's about all that I have to say. I think that's the last slide. So just check with that. Jen? Yep, that's the last one. Okay, so anyway, so that's a bit of a summary. It's maybe you've got some questions for me about that. I mean, I've just tried to sort of give you a bit of an overview, and it's probably just a very small snapshot of what I've done. I've actually done quite a lot of community projects and school projects. Yeah, and I haven't actually included all those slides. But anyway, you've got a bit of an overview of what I've done. And so maybe some people have got some questions they might like to ask me. Can you hear me? Any questions?
Looks like Amy just asked a question in the chat.
No, I just said a comment, but I was thinking if people want to raise, if they want to put on their videos again and raise their hands or put a message in the chat. Peter, they're just so extraordinary. I'm almost speechless because each and every pod, I want to see it in real life. I'm just kind of curious, do you find that among your students, there's a similar interest in the kind of research that you're doing with the combination of the scientific approach with the artistic approach. It just seems extremely advanced for what I'm seeing in general.
Well, I actually don't teach now. I haven't taught for about quite a few years, but I always encourage my students about the importance of being able to replicate what they do. I think the old approach of, half a gumboot full of this and half a gumboot full of that is sort of like, that makes it, it doesn't even bear thinking about. To actually replicate, we really need to keep accurate records. And I've always really encouraged that. And with a digital file as well, it's really good to actually have the photograph of what you've actually achieved, whether it's just an effect or whatever, a note, and how you've actually achieved it. It's so important because the longer you're into ceramics, the more information that you actually glean, and you tend to sort of take off, I find, on a track. You find something really interesting, you think, oh, look, I'll just pursue that. And then when you come back to sort of try and replicate what you've done before, you've actually, unless you've got a really good record of it, it's very hard to replicate it. So I've always encouraged that, and I think it's fundamental to what we do. As we're scientists. We're scientists and we're artists, and we're also using our aesthetic eye to make something that we appreciate, that we hope other people will appreciate. So, and basically, it's a lifetime pursuit, and we're all on the path. And I must say that, from my several times in Canada, I've just been so impressed with the number of people who are doing really interesting things, not just thrown pots. I mean, ceramics is just such a broad field these days, and it always has been. And it's wonderful for kids in education, but just generally wonderful. And it's great for everyone because it's engaging, it's creative, and it engages the sense of touch, sight, and also the imagination. And that's a beautiful thing about our wonderful material, clay. So the magic of clay, that's what it is.
Totally. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about those matte glazes, because I can honestly say I don't think I've ever seen the matte glazes. Here, for the most part, when I see the crystalline glazes, they are shiny. And
the matte glazes are they're exquisitely beautiful to touch, and they're tricky to make. As I mentioned earlier, there are only some clays that you can really grow matte glazes on. I tried for years and didn't have much luck. I think I probably, every clay that I got, I tried, and it needs to obviously be a white clay and a white fine body clay. You don't want the coarse clay. Porcelains are probably the best. But a lot of porcelains don't grow crystals, matte crystals. So there's one clay in Australia that I really liked, JB1. It was made by Clayworks, and they went out of business. But the owner, Max Campbell, said to me, look, I've got 2 ton, the last 2 ton of JB1. Are you interested? And I said, yes, I'll take it. Thanks. So I've been sitting on that pile and using it sparingly. So I only use matte crystals on that clay. But with gloss crystals, you can grow them virtually on any white, fine stoneware. Excuse me. It doesn't have to be porcelain, I've found anyway. So, yeah, that's my take on it. The difference is the recipe. With gloss crystalline glazes, there are really only 3 ingredients, and that is you usually use a frit, silica, and zinc oxide, because those crystals are zinc silicate crystals. With matte crystalline, you don't use the same amount. You use silica and zinc. You use a bit of feldspar and a few other ingredients that that matted out, a bit of titanium. So yeah, and of course they need the same treatment and preparation. They need to be mixed, sieved. I don't ball mill them as much, but I spray them on. But you've really got to get the thickness just exactly right. If it's too thick, it doesn't work. If it's too thin, it doesn't work. So it just takes a bit of understanding and intuition to be able to get that right. And as I mentioned earlier, on each surface, vertical or horizontal or oblique, you get a different result. So you need to be able to adjust the thicknesses for that. It's very, actually, it's very nuanced and it takes practice. Yep.
Well, thank
So
you. We have a question in the chat about, could you please talk about your connection to Pakistan?
yeah, okay. Well, when I was doing my master's down at Wollongong University in Sydney, in New South Wales, and my supervisor, or my supervisor said to me, would I be interested in going to Pakistan and to teach for 6 months, a semester? And I said, well, I don't know whether I'd go for 6 months, but I'd go for a couple of months. So I was on study leave, and I was planning to go to Italy to do some research for my doctorate. So I said, well, look, how about I go there on the way home? So I made contact, and it was arranged for me to go and teach at the National College of Arts in Lahore. So the principal there was Professor Salima Hashmi, and she had a wonderful team of people working there, artists in all the areas: printmaking, painting the miniature, ceramics, everything basically. And the ceramics department didn't have a teacher really, so I said I'll take it on. So I went there and I worked with the students there, and there was a professor who was overseeing it, and yeah, we had a wonderful time there actually, and I still kept contact with about 3 of those students still, and some of them have gone on to become really big names in Pakistani ceramics. So it was a wonderful experience because we actually didn't have a good clay, and we wound up, and we did go and visit a lot of the traditional potters, and I thought the traditional potters were such, like it was the whole process, and a lot of the students who were at the college had no idea where the clay came from. So we went out and used to go and collect clay with a little donkey cart and bring it back to crush it down, slake it out, and use that and experiment with it. But it wasn't suitable for hire fired. So we actually got in contact with one of the tile makers, and actually not tile makers, he was a sanitary ware makers, one of the factories, and he had a lot of clay that he was using. So we used some of that clay, but it didn't throw very well. It was very difficult, but we battled on, and because we wanted to fire stoneware, and we had a gas kiln, and but it was interesting because working with some of the traditional potters, they virtually just had a hole in the ground, so they'd climb down a hole, and they had a big stone down the bottom, a big round stone with a steel rod that came through the middle, and there's a few props to support that. And then their arms would be just a bit above ground level, and they would work throwing flower pots from this hole in the ground. That was in one place. Other places had a big stone that was just a free floating one that they just got moving around, a circular one. As it got moving, it went virtually to the horizontal, and they threw off the hump with that. So look, it was a fascinating education for me to work with some of the traditional potters, and I suggested, like so many rich traditional Islamic and Persian designs, that they should look to their tradition to get some inspiration for some of the decoration and quality of work that they were trying to produce. Anyway, it was an interesting period. I was there for about 3 months, I think, and we did an exhibition at the end with the students, and it's fascinating. We used kick wheels, stand-up kick wheels, so that was fascinating. And that was a different skill altogether. But it was a really rich period of time I was there. And then as a result of the exhibition, I sold all my work and I donated it to a fund there to put girls through the college, girls' education, because public education doesn't exist or didn't exist then. And going and visiting the factory where this sanitary worker, producer that he operated, he had a whole room of young boys in there, like probably about 7, 8, 9, all sitting there making little press molds, and coming from an education background, I found it really quite difficult. But as one of the chaps said to me, he said, look, if they weren't here, they'd be out in the streets creating havoc. So, but anyway, I went back in 2007 and did a series of workshops and had an exhibition and managed to top up the fund, but I think it's gone dry again from what I heard, and they want me to go back, but I haven't been back yet. Anyway, it was a wonderful time, and I loved my time in Pakistan, and I love Pakistani food.
Did anyone else have questions they wanted to ask? They can put up their hand or put it in the chat, or just put in the chat that you'd like us to recognize you. Well, I guess, Deb, do you want to? You're mute. You're muted.
Hugh Graham has raised his hand. So,
Sorry,
Hugh, did
who?
you have a question?
Yeah, you'd mentioned that there's ashes from different trees have different effects. I was wondering if there's specific tree ash that you like to work with.
Yeah, well, I do. It's an interesting point, Hugh. Thanks for the question. Excuse me. In Australia, we've got about 800 different varieties of eucalyptus trees, as you probably know. There's one around here, which is called yellow box. Box refers to a eucalyptus variety, and it's a very dense hardwood, and it's commonly used as firewood. But they're a beautiful tree. But when Australia was colonised, a lot of the trees were cleared, obviously, and there's not that. I mean, there's still yellow box around, but you have to go further and further out to get it. But yellow box is the particular ash that I like, and yellow box and stringy bark. I usually mix a couple together, but those two are really good. And yeah, I know some ashes are much more dense and are much heavier and don't, like say for example in the wood kiln. If you're using an ash deposit kiln that you want the ash to form the glaze, you need to use a lighter wood, like for example a pine or a cypress is it's a light tree, but the ash in cypress isn't very dense. It's very dense and doesn't actually carry right the way through the kiln. Whereas if you use, say for example, radiata pine, it's a green ash and it's much lighter and usually carries right through the kiln. But yellow box would be used more in a say for example a Burri box style of kiln, because it's a much denser wood and it burns much hotter, whereas pines and the other lighter woods tend to burn quickly with a long flame, but they don't burn very hot, so you've got to keep feeding it in. But I really like yellow box ash, yellow box and a bit of stringy bark, so that combination is what I use. So I just mix it, I just take it out of the fire and sieve it, add it to the glaze. Make a glaze with a bit of ball clay and a bit of whiting, a bit of calcium carbonate. So I hope that answers your question here.
That's great. Thank you so much.
No trouble.
So does anyone else have any questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much. It was really intriguing and I enjoyed your answer about Pakistan. And I think there'll be endless information on the glazes and the wood ash. It seems like an endless proposition. So I think if everyone's okay with having asked any questions or said anything they wish, we can end this Zoom. And thank you so much for your patience, and thank you for staying with us, Peter, and getting back on. And it was an intriguing talk.
Well, thank you very much, Deborah, and to Amy, and to you all. Really, you've persevered and listened, turned up, and when it wasn't on, and turned up again for the second time. So, look, I'm sorry about that, and look, it was great, and I just I enjoyed it. It was good, and I'm pleased that you're interested in my work, and hopefully, I'll get back to Canada in some stage.
Yeah.
Anyway,
That
if
would be
anyone's got any questions, they could probably email me or whatever, and I can try and help them from that. So thanks very much. I really appreciate your
Peter.
patience as well. Thank you.
Well, technology. Technology has a beast of its own. So thank you all. And I think what we'll do is we will end this meeting. So good luck
Thank you,
with
Thanks,
Peter.
Deborah.
everything.
And thanks,
Okay.
Amy. Thank you. Thank you.
All
Bye.
right. Bye-bye.